Hey, how are we doing today? Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Jack, you can hear me? Anne-Marie, can you hear me? I'm just going to keep on talking until I hear Anne-Marie saying, okay, she says she can hear me, but she cannot see me. I wonder why. Jackie says she can hear me. What about you? Can you hear me now? What's going on with the internet? Anne-Marie, can you confirm? Yes, you can see me. Thank you. But I think Anne-Marie cannot hear me yet. So I'm just waiting for her to be able to do that. Looks like it's just you. Okay, maybe you can refresh on your end and then let us know. What you'll just do is cut out, the beginning part of the video since it's just the three of us who are here. I think, good, perfect. So I'm just going to start afresh and then I'll just allow you to cut out the beginning part, the first 15 minutes. Yeah. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Table Talk. Table Talk Malachite's lessons from the therapy room. We are glad to have you here. We are excited about today's conversation. My name is Tina Ntulo, and I am the founder for the Malachite Center for Mental Health. So this conversation grew out of a talk that I did for one of my corporate clients on emotional agility at the workplace. The talk was such a success that we figured that we might as well do one for the home. I mean, why not, right? So please like, share, make sure that you're inviting your friends to log on and participate in the conversation. I have some slides that I'm going to try and share, and I'm really hoping that it's all going to go well. The last time we did this, we blacked out. So we want to make sure that we are able to handle both at the same time. So let me know if you can still see me. Yeah, I can still see you. So I think I'm not going to switch to slides. I will just speak from here, and then hopefully everything will go well. Perfect. So where are we having this conversation? We're having this conversation because Uganda's middle class family is parenting in a very different world from the one it grew up in. We have pressures at work around incomes and targets. Of course, right now, most of us have come from dual income homes. We have, most of us are coming from wounded childhoods. And one of the unique things about Uganda is that you can actually, for those of us, especially who are over the age of 40, most of us grew up in an area in this country where there was some kind of turmoil. Either it was central Uganda where there was the HIV scourge, maybe it was northern Uganda where there was the LRA war, maybe it was eastern Uganda where there was the skirmishes between the Karamojong and the Iteso in those days. Maybe it was eastern Uganda or southern Uganda that is struggling with land fragmentation, climate change, landslides. So many of us have been impacted in one way or another by something, and if you were not impacted by something, you had to receive relatives into your home who were impacted by something, and therefore we then say that you received what we call secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. So because of that, we always have to see ourselves a little bit different from our neighbors in terms of our own emotional health. And if we didn't come from homes where our parents were attuned to this and made sure that, we had that space to explore, our emotional health, emotional challenges, and come up with sound strategies on how to navigate our emotions. Many of us have grown up with facing challenges around emotions, displaying emotions, living in our emotions, and so we're not necessarily emotionally healthy. But then, of course, once we start to have our children, we're expected to bring up emotionally healthy children while we are also healing ourselves, and that in itself can be a challenge. So let's start off by describing what is emotional agility. Emotional agility is the ability to Emotional agility is the ability to notice, name, and navigate emotions with presence and intention. It is the ability to notice, name, and navigate emotions with presence and intention. When I do trainings on emotional intelligence, I say awareness. Self-awareness is about being able to feel an emotion, to acknowledge that I'm feeling something, and then I'm able to name that emotion, and then I'm able to tame that emotion. So we always use the phrase feel it, name it, tame it. Feel it, name it, tame it. So when we are emotionally agile, it's not just about feeling, naming, and taming it, but it's also being able to navigate the emotion with presence and intention. So emotional agility is not about pretending, neither is it about exploding or imploding, but it's about choosing our response based on our shared values. What are the shared values of our home? What are the shared values of the workplace? What are the shared values of my school? Or what are the shared values of the community in which I live and work? So when I'm feeling it, when I'm naming it, when I'm taming it, and I'm navigating these emotions, am I choosing a response that is in values with the people who I interact with on a daily basis? Right. So the Ugandan household, like I've mentioned, is changing. We have a lot of parents who work from outside the home. We're now seeing our children going through immense pressures at school around performance. This is the grades, around sociability, around and can I say emotional maturation as well. We're also seeing issues coming up in our marriages, in our parenting styles, and this mix as the global goes local, as the local goes global. And we're also having this, what we call fragmented emotional support, because we are struggling mainly to find places where we can have candid conversations around how we feel. How do we navigate emotions? How do we even name them? Every time I train people and I tell them, do you know there's 140 different emotions they can feel? People are actually in shock. They're like, Tina, what do you mean 140? Well, there are 140 feelings that you can have at any one given time. And most of the time, we actually experience one or two of them at the same time. Sometimes even four. You can have 4 feelings, 8 feelings, all at the same time. And therefore, this fragmented support, where you can actually be able to feel free, vulnerable, and talk about your emotions, does not, for many people, does not exist. Not that it doesn't exist entirely, but for many people, it does not exist. So the opposite of emotional agility is emotional rigidity. Emotional rigidity. When we have emotional rigidity, it shows up in the way we dismiss our children or each other's tears. We dismiss each other's pain. You know, when something happens and someone tells you, "Ye, only that," and you're like, "Why are you dismissing what I'm feeling?" When your children are crying, you're like, "Keep quiet. You're not supposed to cry. Don't do that." And you're dismissing an emotional moment. So that now becomes the seeds that we are sowing for emotional rigidity. When we are snapping at one another, especially as spouses, when one of them says, "I want to talk about something that's bothering me," and then another one is in a bad mood and they snap at them, at that point in time, we're introducing emotional rigidity into our households or into our families. Then when we bottle everything up, many times we're like, "I don't want to rock the peace. I don't want to mess things up. I do not want to spoil how things are going. So I am just going to keep quiet and I'm just going to suck it in," And many times we are actually confusing maturity with sucking it in. And then, of course, the opposite of bottling everything up is the emotional outburst, where we will display emotion, intense emotion, especially in what we call the negative emotion, without care or consideration of the people who are going to be on the receiving end of our display of emotion. So even that is rigidity. For some people say, I'm just who I am. I'm just going to let people have it as it is. That's also being emotionally rigid. So there are 4 pitfalls that we can go through when we are emotionally rigid that can make agility a challenge at home. The first one is when we keep things, when we bottle things up and we keep on going as though nothing is wrong. Have you ever been in a situation where there's been a challenge, there's been a conflict or a brooding conflict, and people are quiet about it for months on end? No one's saying anything. And all of us are just pretending like nothing happened, you know? That's bottling it up. And most of the time, this leads to burnout, and also it can lead to explosions in the long run. People are like, oh my goodness, I didn't know you were feeling like that. And yet this person has been bottling it up for a long time. The other thing that could happen is that we could start to brood. Brooding is what introduces what we call silent resentment in the home, silent resentment in families, silent resentment from children to parents, parents to children. This dissatisfaction where, because you're not able to express what you're feeling, you begin to have some negative emotions towards another person. And what this does is it creates an emotional distance between you and them. So emotional brooding creates a distance between you and the person who you love. The other thing that could happen is with that we can start blame shifting. Start shifting the blame. You made me feel this way. You're responsible for how I'm feeling. You did this to me. And when that happens, we avoid any personal ownership in the conflict. And then the last one is what we call bouncing, escaping into work and other distractions, business, projects, social life, even clubs, all of these things that we do outside of the home in the name of business, so that we do not have to come home to address the actual emotional challenges that are taking place. So let me just name them again. They are bottling, which is just keep on going; brooding, which breeds silence, resentment and emotional distance; blaming and shifting, which is, you made me feel this way; and then escaping into work, distractions, and emotional busyness. So what are some of the real life examples of emotional rigidity? We begin to see children who are sensitive being mistaken for being weak. When a child is emotionally sensitive, we begin to lash out at them and we call them weak. We begin to see that we no longer understand or create space for silent husbands. We're always wanting to aggravate and see anger. I remember those days when we used to do gender work a long time ago. People used to tell us that, when my husband is quiet for too long, I have to provoke an argument so that we can fight. Then I know, oh, he's still present with me. Those are things of them days, but actually some of that is still happening in people's homes today. It is not a good thing to do, but it is still happening in people's homes today. And then also that teenagers' emotional overload is sometimes mistaken for laziness. Because when the teenagers go into emotional overload, most of the time they freeze. They freeze and they begin to neglect some of the duties and their studies. And then we begin to blame them for being lazy. Yeah. So these are some of the real life examples of the impacts of emotional rigidity. And then, of course, at the end of the day, we become emotional inaccessible to one another. And we begin to see that that people in a home will complain of abandonment and will complain of grief. And this emotional inaccessibility is also the root of emotional abuse. When parents or when spouses are not accessible to one another, and it's also the reason why loneliness creeps into relationships. So we find people who respond or people who report and use the words emotion. My people were emotionally inaccessible. My parents were emotionally inaccessible. My spouse is emotionally inaccessible. Will always or most of the time mention, I feel abandoned or I was abandoned. They will feel grief. They'll report that they were raised by absentee parents, that is, parents who are not present in the home. And children will feel unseen or emotionally unsafe. Like, in our home, we don't talk about these things. We don't mention these things. We don't express how we feel. That is emotional, not being able to. When this is what happens when we are in a place or in a relationship where where the other person is emotionally inaccessible. The other challenge is for what I'm naming or using to describe children who made it against all odds. Some of us were that child. You were either born premature or the birth was traumatic, which means your mom went through very long labor and there were challenges or complications in your birthing. Those of us who were brought up by moms who had postpartum depression, parents who are struggling with mental health challenges or alcoholism, and also homes where they had negative emotional survival patterns. So these children who made it against all odds almost always will struggle with emotional challenges because there's a part of their brain that probably did not form well. And they'll be having these deficiencies. Yeah, they'll have deficiencies that will need extra care through counseling and support to be able to help them to function emotionally well. So whether the child is coming from a place where there was emotional inaccessibility, or whether they by the circumstances around their birthing have ended up with challenges in their brain structure, there are 5 key symptoms that you will see that will be able to help you identify this child who's struggling with their emotions. The first one is that they'll be clingy, right? The second one is they're easily overwhelmed. This child is easily overwhelmed. And we also see this in an adult, adults who are clingy as well, not just children. A clingy adult is the one who is always looking for their spouse, always looking for their sister, always upset when people don't greet them. They are clingy. Then they're easily overwhelmed, right? Everything is about big emotions. And then they're sensitive to tone. People who are emotionally rigid are sensitive to tone, yeah? And then they will have what we call psychosomatic symptoms because they feel pain in their bodies. So they'll always, every time something goes wrong, they will fall sick. That's what we call as psychosomatic symptoms. And the most common ones are illnesses of the gastric, intestinal tract, headaches, backaches, and chest pains. And of course, we also have the symptoms that are akin to panic attacks. And then we'll also see children or adults who are withdrawn, not necessarily that they're introverted, but they are withdrawn. And then we'll also see people who struggle to display emotions, what we call the flat emotions. They are flat emotions. Yeah, they don't look like they're excited about anything. So how do we break this cycle? How do we break this cycle? The first thing is, as families or as individuals in a family, we have to name where we are stuck. Are we stuck at the naming? Are we stuck at the taming? Are we stuck at the navigating? Or are we stuck at being present? Or are we stuck at using intention? So where in the cycle am I stuck? The cycle of agility, where am I stuck? And being able to identify that place, because depending on where you're stuck, you're going to apply a different strategy. Then the next thing we have to learn how to do is to hold emotional space. When I say feel my emotion, I cannot name an emotion that I haven't felt. I have to be able to go, this is anger, this is frustration, this is happiness, this is peace, this is love, this is, I have to be able to sit or to hold the emotional space long enough to name it. Sometimes when people come into counseling and you ask them, how did that make you feel? They honestly do not know. Was I angry? I don't know whether I was angry. I don't know whether I was happy. I don't know whether I didn't know what to feel. That's not true. You feel something, you just didn't know what to name it. Because we always feel. We might not know what we name, the name of that thing that we're feeling, but we always feel. When we hold emotional space, we are then able to ask ourselves, do I have the skills to resolve what I am feeling and also why I am feeling what I am feeling? And if I don't, then what kind of conversations do I need to have to be able to repair my process of resolving what I feel? And then do the inner work. And the inner work could be counseling, it could be coaching, it could also be finding a good book. The inner work could also be having coffee or a meal with the right person. The inner work could also be a break. It could just mean I just need to go off and have a quiet day. And when I get back, I'll be fine. And the other things that we do to break the cycle is once we have learned how to do the inner work, we create new rituals. New rituals is new things or new habits in our lives that enable us to remain emotionally healthy. So name where you're stuck, hold emotional space, carry out the repairs that need to be done, do the inner work, and create new rituals. So how do we move from surviving to thriving? How do I move from surviving to thriving? The first thing we have to remember now as parents, as adults in the home, is that I am the hinge to the next generation. I am the hinge to the next generation. So I am the one who's going to pivot emotional inaccessibility into emotional presence. I'm the one who's going to pivot emotional challenges or rigidity into emotional agility. I'm the one who's going to pivot poor emotional intelligence to emotional intelligence. I am the hinge, and I am the one who, through my demonstration and my speech, is going to teach the next generation how to be emotionally present. The second thing is that I have to spend some time learning to become emotionally present, especially if the parents I had were not emotionally present. So this means that I have to be intentional to learn what it means to be present. And then the last thing is I have to go for healing, because healing is possible. And when healing happens, legacies change. When healings happen, legacies change, because we are able to move from places where we struggle to enjoy the emotions God gave us, right? To places where actually our emotions fuel passion, our emotions fuel innovation, our emotions fuel a general well-being in the home, right? So healing is possible, and we can invest in healing. And there are a number of really, really good therapists and coaches, even books, podcasts. These days, we have a lot of resources out there that we can use to help us heal. So at the end of the day, I cannot finish a session without, without, going to the foundation, which is the Word of God. One of the beautiful things that God tells us in His Word in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 16, is that He has opened up, or He has provided glorious riches, which the Holy Spirit uses to build our inner strength. That inner strength is our heart, our very core. If you read it from the Amplified Version, it says, my very core, the inner core of me, is built up through the riches, the glorious riches, as used by the Holy Spirit in our hearts. Then the second thing that we also look also in the book of Ephesians is that we are encouraged as parents not to provoke our children, but to love them, right? To love them. And also children are encouraged to honor their parents. And then the last one is Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 19, that tells us to choose life for our children, for ourselves and for our children. To choose life for ourselves and for our children. So as we come to the end of this broadcast, there will be notes on our WhatsApp channel, which Anne-Marie is going to put the number in the chat. Please feel free to go and download the notes. Please share the link with family and friends, and make sure as much as possible that this conversation goes far and wide and people can learn how to be emotionally agile. Thank you very much, and look forward to catching up with you next week when we come back to Doing Mental Health God's Way. God bless you and take care.